Hello, and today we've got Mark Donaldson, ESPN commentator. So, Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Angus. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So, what was the first job you had in the media?
First job was an unpaid job with Scott FM, a radio station, back in early 1996. And my college tutor, who I was still at college at the time, said to me, always make sure you record if you get the chance. If you're ever on TV or radio, record your first ever bulletin. And I still have it to this day. And it sounds squeaky. And it was a 5-goal thriller at Kilbowie Park between Clydebank and Dunfermline. And that was the first one, and I actually got paid for that. I think I got £75 or £100 for that, and I was working for free at the time. So that was my first paid involvement in sport, while working for free while still at college in 1996.
So, you've commentated on a number of sports, but what is the best sport you've commentated on?
Well, I love football. A lot of the games that we do at ESPN are done from a booth. They're done what we call off tube, because I mainly do Italian games, and I've been lucky enough to do Roma against Juventus from Stadio Olimpico, which was a career highlight in May 2019. I've been lucky enough to commentate on the World Cup for ESPN Radio, and I was due to commentate on my second Euros this summer, which will hopefully now be next summer. But being at Wimbledon is something special, and commentating on the US Open tennis is something special. But the US Open for us Brits was always something that, if you got away with it, you would try and stay up at night if you liked your tennis, because you were never going to see the really late ones, like the nighttime finishes, because they can finish after midnight here. So you're not staying up till after 5. But just being a rascal as a youngster and managing to stay up past midnight to watch some tennis, and to have now done 10 in a row of them, something I'm sure Celtic would love to do next season, but to do 10 US Opens in a row has been really, really special. And I think the one thing that's important, no matter how many you do, especially with all the issues that are going on right now surrounding the pandemic, never take anything for granted. That 10 in a row could end up being 10 in a row, and I never do another one. Who knows what's going to happen? Wimbledon, I've done 4 of the last 5. I may never get back. I may never fly again to Italy to do games or whatever. So I think it's important that when you get the opportunity, you know that there are many, many others that would love to do what you do. So you're not complacent with what you do. So I think there's various highlights from all 3 of the sports. Oh, and I have to say, the baseball, being at the World Series, all 7 games, historic, all 7 away teams winning in the World Series in Houston and Washington. I grew up, I watched baseball a few games. I was never a big fan. And then I got the job on Caps Off, the TV show which ESPN produces for BT Sport. And last year, 2019, to go to San Diego to a Scottish night, to Los Angeles to do live hits, to Fenway Park, to Washington, to Houston for the World Series. I mean, that's something you wouldn't even dream of growing up. So I take nothing for granted and thoroughly enjoy it.
What's the best football match you've commentated on?
No pressure. I mean, the 4-4 game at Tynecastle will always stick out, just for the weirdness of the ending. The Roma Juve game, being there, it's just something special. I mean, it wasn't a great game. Juventus had already won the title. Roma were going for Champions League in May 2019, and Roma won it 2-0. So that was certainly special. But to commentate on the World Cup for ESPN Radio in 2014 was special as well. And I think with being a commentator, there's no right or wrong way. It's totally subjective. You'll like some commentators, I'll like other ones. We may like the same one. We may disagree on others. There's no right or wrong. I don't script what I say. I've got my intro paragraph, which is always usually the same, depending on if I'm doing it off tube. With the teams different. But then that's it. I'm off the cuff after that. Some people script it, and I just think it's like you celebrating a Hearts goal. You don't know what you're going to do. You've got no idea, and you celebrate differently if it's the meaning of the game. I mean, the cup final when we beat Hibs 5-1. You celebrate these goals differently. So yeah, you're not gonna like the same commentators as me, but it's all off the cuff. It's all off the cuff. And one commentary for Greece in the World Cup in 2014 for ESPN Radio. It was something along the lines of Papastatopoulos, who scored the late equaliser, one of the biggest names in European football. Just something daft like that, because it's all right to have something in your head that you want to say or you think might work, but it's got to be at the right time. And I think the key, and one thing I would say to all budding commentators out there is have a think about what you may say, but don't try and force it in. And if you've prepped for 6 hours, you don't need all that prep and those 6 hours work to be put into that commentary, because it's not about you. It's not about all your stats. If you use 10%, that's fine, but you've got the other 90%, and that's key. If it's a TV commentary, let the pictures be the star and don't try and become the superstar yourself, because you're just a commentator, and you've got to remember that.
So you must have commentated in many great stadiums. What's the best stadium you've commentated in?
Stadio Olimpico was special for Roma against Juventus. Is this purely for football? Because
any sport.
Arthur Ashe Stadium for the US Open is the largest tennis stadium in the world, 24,500, and that was incredible to commentate in there. And because we do it so often now, you always kind of think flippantly, oh, great, we're going back to the US Open. I mean, as I said to you earlier, there's so many people that would love to do that, so you can't take that for granted. And there's still that era, that awe of kind of walking in. And lucky enough to commentate on Centre Court in Wimbledon a couple of times as well, and that's very special. For football, did a couple of. I have to say, Celtic Park and Ibrox on Champions League nights in 2003. I did commentary for UEFA, and they both qualified. Rangers played Man United. Celtic played an Anderlecht side with a young kid called Vincent Kompany. I think he was 17 or 18 at the time. And they're just special nights. They really, really are. For events, I mean, commentating on a lot of the Hearts games in Europe were special. Stuttgart in 2000, away from home. I know we lost 1-0, but the Mercedes-Benz Stadium was very impressive. And I loved Feyenoord's De Kuip when we played there against Ruud Gullit's side. So it's hard to say one. Again, it's totally subjective, but those are some of the ones that I've certainly really enjoyed commentating on. Basel was an interesting one. Braga was another, by the way, the 2-2 game when De Vries scored a couple. That was they were a good side, and we did well to get through to the group stage to face the likes of Feyenoord and Schalke and Ferencváros. But the Basel one was an interesting one because you fly into an airport called Mulhouse, which is in France, but it's kind of got 3 different exits. You can go to France, so you can stay there. You can go to Freiburg in Germany, or you can go to Basel in Switzerland. But a lot of the people in the Basel area, I thought, spoke French. And some do, but it's the majority that spoke German. So it's FC Bâle. For French it is. For the German speakers, it's Basel. So it was difficult. You get a lot of people, if you said the wrong thing, looking up at you. And we were in the main stand. The Hearts fans, I believe, were maybe behind the goal in Basel. So that was the one thing when you do the away commentaries in Europe, you're not near the Hearts fans. And one of the hottest ones, and I mean that as far as temperature is concerned, as well as atmosphere, was AEK Athens against Hibernian. And it was the day after 9/11. We were due to fly out, and they cancelled it. They cancelled the flight when we were on the plane. The plane ahead of us carrying supporters was allowed to leave. We weren't. So we went back the next week, and they were there 4 hours before kickoff, because we always like to get there before the fans. No chance. They were burning American flags, doing all sorts, and that was really, really scary. We had this plexiglass in front of us, which we had to open because the temperature, I mean, this is like Athens in late September. It was roasting. So we had to open it, and I'm not saying we were scared because we had security and everything there. But it was intense. And that stadium, was absolutely jam packed that night, and they were not forgiving those Athens fans. Just great experiences, and that's something that didn't involve Hearts.
So, what's the worst moment you've had to commentate on?
Again, are we going any sport?
Yep, any sport, yeah.
One of the most embarrassing was when I was commentating on a women's match on the old grandstand court at the US Open in New York, in Flushing in Queens. And it was Liverpool Hearts at the same time. And David Templeton scored. And if you think Athens is warm in September, the end of August, start of September for New York is hot and humid and sticky. So again, we didn't have the window shut. We had to have it open. And I let out a yelp. And it was in the middle of a point. And they didn't stop the play, but there were people in front of me looking around because Templeton had scored with 5 minutes to go. And that got us back on level terms. So trying to be professional and commentate on a women's match at the US Open while looking down at my laptop as Templeton scored. There's always going to be embarrassing moments. I'm not saying that was embarrassing. I like to tell the story because I was daft. I should have said nothing, but that's what it meant. I'd been at White Hart Lane. Was it the year before? I think 2011. Yep. And that was Harry Kane's debut, and he missed a penalty. Jamie McDonald saved the penalty. I was lucky enough to get to White Hart Lane. I couldn't go to Tynecastle, maybe gladly, because I was US Open bound, and that was the 5-0 game. So Anfield was always a stadium I wanted to go to. I have a soft spot now for Liverpool, having written Stevie Nicol' book and heard firsthand of him speaking about Hillsborough for the first time since it actually happened. He hadn't even discussed that in public since then. So I now have a soft spot for Liverpool, but even back then, I wanted to go to Anfield, and I'm lucky that my mum and dad were there. So they I lived that game vicariously through them to be at Anfield behind the goal, and eventually got to Anfield in September 2016, I think it was, 2017-16. It was when they opened the new stand, and Stevie's book launch was the night before. So we'd flown over to Liverpool for that, and because it was the opening of the new main stand at Anfield, all the old legends were there. So it was great for Stevie to catch up with everybody. A quick story about that, and as you've noticed, I do go off on tangents, and I know you said 10 minutes or whatever, but I apologise. We were in Liverpool. We'd flown over on the Thursday night. Had the book launch on the Friday. But on the Thursday, Stevie and I had gone for a wander, and we'd passed one of the comedy clubs in Liverpool, and there's a guy called Paul Tompkinson, who I'm sure you know from like Phoenix Nights and various other comedies, and he's friends with Peter Kay. And we'd seen him outside the club, the comedy club, and he's like, "Oh, you coming along tonight? I'll get you on the guest list." Because he was a big Liverpool fan. He's like, Stevie Nicol. Stevie hadn't been back for 10 years, so this was like, whoa. He said, "Look, come, we'll get everything's on the house, whatever." And Stevie's like, "Hi," and we're tired from the flight. He goes, "Hi, okay." So then we get back to the hotel. We're having a couple of beers, and the phone goes. So he picks up. "Hello?" So it was Kenny Dalglish. Kenny's like, he called him Bumper. And he said, "You want to come over tonight?" Stevie's like, "Nah, I'm going to the comedy club." Kenny's like, "I've not seen you for 10 years. He goes, "You're what?" He says, I'm going to the comedy club with the boy I'm with." Kenny's like, "What are you talking about?" So yeah, he ended up going to the comedy club. We had a great night. And Paul Tompkinson now tells the story of the night that Stevie Nicol had the chance to go and hang out with Kenny Dalglish, but instead came to this comedy club open mic night in Liverpool on a Thursday night. It's funny. I don't know if you heard the Jim Jeffries story about 1998 when it's the day after the cup final and he's going to get some paracetamol on Princess Street, and the poor lad with the heart scarf is absolutely hammered from the night before. And Jim says to him, "Do you have a good night?" He goes, "Ah," he says, "God bless that Jim Jeffries." And then he kind of looked up as Jim was walking away. As Jim's got a smirk on his face and kind of went like that. We had a similar moment in Liverpool. There's this guy who sadly had too much to drink. Stevie asked him, he said, "You a Liverpool fan, pal?" He goes, aye, because he doesn't recognise Stevie. And he says, "He's been going for long." He goes, "I've been going for 30 years. He says, what was your favourite team?" He goes, "That team in the 80s. I mean, the team in the early 80s, and then the team that won the European Cup in 84 and then 86. He says, "I love those boys. And Stevie's like, "I guess good pal." He says, "I love them as well." But he didn't let on who he was and just put up $5 in the boy's hat or something like that and walked on. And the boy was totally oblivious. I think it was really nice that he's got no idea. He may have been, if he was sober, he may have realised. I don't think so. I don't think Stevie's changed that much. But it's great. And I think both Jim and Stevie, they both know. They both know what adulation is like. And from the Hearts fans for Jim and from Liverpool fans for Stevie and his teammates, I think it just shows you what clubs like Hearts, like Liverpool, like any team, whoever your team is, what they mean for society. And the quicker we can get back safely to having games and we're able to attend, although I don't think it'll be for a while, the better, because people initially spoke about football not being back and how it was all about safety. And of course it was as well. But after a period of time, we all miss it. And we're now trying to find a way to get back safely. And if we can, and I think it'll be good for fans as well, because there's only so long you can spend cooped up in your house, seeing the same faces and the same walls. And it's hard. It's hard, but hopefully it's not long before we're back. I think it'll be 2021, but hopefully we can get back to what we consider was normal.
So just a couple of quick fire ones to end on. What was the last game you commentated on before COVID?
Juventus Inter behind closed doors.
And finally, what was the last time you paid for a ticket to go to a football match?
Penny Cook Athletic. Last time I was home, maybe a couple of years ago now. I don't ever want a freebie to go there. I know most of the guys and the backroom staff. That's the lifeblood. That's my dad. If Hearts aren't playing, we'll always go and see Penny Cook Athletic. And the donate a ticket scheme, happy to contribute to that. Anything to do with local football for my town and my home team, I'm all for. And I mean, £6. Here's a tenner. It's not about. It's not about can I get my £4 back and change or whatever. I don't get very often. I rarely get. I mean, I haven't. My last home game at Tynecastle was Kilmarnock 4-0 between Christmas and New Year, which was 2016, 2017, whenever it was, 15 or 6, whenever. So I haven't been back very often. When I do get back, it's usually during the winter break. So if Penny Cook are playing, I want to go and see them, and I want to help support them and do whatever I can.
Right, Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angus.